I want to be careful about equating good design to being creative, but I think being creative often leads to good designs, if I can say it that way.
Outside the box thinking a little bit.
Right. And I sometimes have students, when I'm teaching lesson planning to them, who say, well, I'm just not that creative. And I say, oh, come on. You're an image bearer of God. You were created to create. Everyone is creative. Welcome to Hallway Conversations. We're a trio of educators who have plenty of questions about teaching and learning and school culture, and we believe in the value of collaboration and reflection as we seek to keep growing as teachers. So this podcast is our place for thinking out loud together about issues in education and why they might matter to Christian educators. Welcome to the conversation.
Hello everyone, welcome to Hallway Conversations. My name is Matt Beamers.
I'm Abby DeGroat.
And I'm Dave Mulder.
Thanks for joining us everyone. Dave and Abby, good to see you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Alright folks, if you are new here, we find topics or questions, quotes from books we are reading, and we circle around them, toss ideas around, and we explore each other's thinking. That said, if you have ideas or quotes or feedback about this podcast, topics we can talk about, or just want to share what Hallway Conversations you're having, please email us at hallwayonvospod@gmail.com. That's hallwayonvospod@gmail.com. Dave and Abby, we often start with a check-in question here. Sometimes they're related to the topic, sometimes they're not. I don't think they're related to the topic, mostly because I don't know the topic that Abby's bringing. But it would not surprise me if somehow this check-in question is going to be tied in by you later on. So I actually have an option. I have an option for you choices. For a check-in question.
Oh, good. I like choices.
They are not related at all to each other or to what we're about to talk about, I think. So, what fashion trend would you go back to from your high school days that you sort of miss? So what fashion trend would you go back to? Would you bring with us? Or if we were going out karaokeing tonight, what song would you sing? So I'm giving you two options. Both of these are very vulnerable questions.
Yeah. Okay, I have mine.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so my favorite song in high school was To Be With You by Mr. Big. And I feel like that is kind of a random choice, but it was my friends and I's favorite song. We used to belt it with all of our windows down, right in our cars, driving around the loop, as small-town Iowans will do.
The loop. I have no idea what that is.
Every town has one.
Every town has
do you really not know this concept?
I do not know this concept.
Okay,
I
literally
don't.
I don't think it happens anymore.
No, I don't think so either.
What's the loop?
So we didn't have cell phones, obviously.
Yeah, you're that old.
I am that old. And so
you're the worst.
To hang out, like on the weekend or during the week, we would all just meet in our cars at a designated spot on Main Street, and often our entertainment would be driving in circles in what's called the loop in our small towns.
Passing your friends and
waving. And if we, so we had what's called Felco in Rock Valley, and we'd all meet there, and then we'd drive our loops. Sometimes we went to Sioux Center.
Sure.
Sometimes Sheldon.
Yeah.
I never preferred Sheldon, but other people did.
Oh, wow.
The
truth comes out.
Right, so
Mr. Big.
But would that
Mr. Big driving the loop. Folks, if you
be with you. There we go, that's my choice.
Folks, if you are listening to this podcast and you have a loop or you had a loop in your growing up experience,
I think they're all gone.
Could you please send us an email and just let us know what town?
You're invalidating my experience.
What loop? And what song? What song?
Here we go. I like that question actually for our listeners.
That's a good one.
What town? Tell us about your loop. Tell us about the song.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, my go-to karaoke song is "We Didn't Start the Fire" by Billie Joe.
Oh my!
It's a good one.
I know every word, but I'm not going to sing it now. So.
Yeah. I know every word to "Ice Ice Baby" by Vanilla Ice.
There's another good one, right?
There is no end to the things you bring out that shock.
Every word, I can sing the whole thing.
One of these things is not like the other.
We're going to sing karaoke one of these weekends, friends.
Wow. So we're not going to record it.
No.
We're not going to record it.
Wow.
What about you? Yeah.
Oh my word. Well, I don't sing, so there's nothing I karaoke. I can tell you that I went through a phase for whatever reason that when I was photocopying at the last school, and this happened for quite a while, when I was photocopying anything, I would start in my mind singing Cher's "You Can Turn Back Time." And I have a distinct memory of, for quite a while, that song, and I don't even know all the words to that song, just the first few lines. I don't know that I'd karaoke, but
you're making your photocopies,
I'm singing Cher.
So good.
I'm singing Cher, and if I could bring one, I don't know if it's fashion. I just think mullets are the coolest.
You do not.
I'm having this conversation.
Don't invalidate my feelings, please. I absolutely think they're the coolest. When I see guys on campus right now, two things. I think A, I wish I could do that. B, that guy must play on the hockey team.
There it is.
Right, like I often associate, mullet, like hockey hair is like the other name, and so
I'm not a fan.
Shocking. You didn't like us driving the loop, stare at all the guys with mullets?
I think mullets were a thing.
It was a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Not in my high school.
Not in your day.
No, it was all the long, flowy.
All right, folks. If you want to if you'd like to share loop, song, town, or what fashion item you'd want to bring back from your growing up experience, and we can share those publicly. We would love to on our next podcast. So.
If you're open to sharing, say so. Yeah.
All right.
Actually, there is a connection here.
There is. Okay.
Because we're going to talk about design.
Let's do this.
Yes.
All right,
okay.
Abby.
So this is the book I'm bringing today. It's A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink, and I read it years and years ago. I think I told Dave that I think I first read it when I was in Dort's Masters of Education program. I think it was a required text.
Me too, it was.
Yep. And it's actually a business book. It's not an education book, and it is about the idea that he talks a lot about left brain and right brain, how both are responsible for flourishing, right? But we usually think of academics and business in left brain terms, linear, rational, and we don't take advantage of or utilize the right design, whole brain thinking, playfulness, empathy, some of those soft skills that live kind of in the right hemisphere of our brains.
To be clear, too, he's using this as a metaphor, left brain, right brain.
Not actually that things live in that part of your brain, but the idea of those skills, right? Thank you for clarifying.
I just want to be clear.
Yes. And so mixing this idea of the whole brain and bringing both of those sides together in the things that we do. And I'm gonna he has one part in chapter 2 where he talks about, and this really resonated with me as a Target shopper, right? I love Target, and he talks about how there are these in an age of abundance, what we're looking for in products, for example, is not only their utility, but also their design and their beauty, right? And he uses the example of a toilet brush, actually, because there is an abundance of toilet brushes, right, that will do what they're made to do. The utility of them is the same, but which one am I going to choose? I'm going to choose the one that is designed the best, right? And so I'm attracted to that design, and he talks about other products as well, and Target is a master at this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've all noticed that while you shop there, but like they are a master of getting products that appeal to design aesthetics of people like me, right, who shop there. And so this is the quote I'm going to read from you from chapter 2. This is right after that part. In an age of abundance, appealing only to rational, logical, and functional needs is woefully insufficient. Engineers must figure out how to get things to work, but if those things are not also pleasing to the eye or compelling to the soul, few will buy them. There are too many other options. Mastery of design, empathy, play, and other seemingly soft aptitudes is now the main way for individuals and firms to stand out in a crowded marketplace. And so he's talking about business and the business world and selling products, but I wonder if this also applies to education. So I'm thinking about the interplay between design and some of those other skills. He talks about empathy, play, telling a compelling story, and our role as teachers to do that for our students in the way we design our classrooms, in the way we design our lessons, even in the aesthetic of the school itself, right? Yeah. What role does design play? What role should it play? And how important is it? So that's kind of my question.
Wow.
That's really interesting to hear you saying that, because I'm thinking about, so the public high school in our town, they just built a brand new high school building, and it is gorgeous.
Yes.
And it is a wonder to walk through it and to see how well designed it is. And it has me thinking immediately as you're saying that. Something that they were really intentional as they were designing that building was they asked the question, what kind of pedagogy do we want to embody? And how does the physical space embody that pedagogy? They were making design decisions based on what kind of learning experiences they wanted students to have.
Right. Which is a radical shift, I feel like, for how schools in the past have been built.
That's what I'm thinking, right? So it's not just this box of 4 walls and we're just going to set some desks in there and the teacher has a podium and go, right? Like, what kinds of seating, the way the lighting is designed. There's a lot of windows. There's a lot of glass. It is a gorgeous space, but it also changes what's possible because of the way that it's designed.
Right. And anyone who's taught in more than one space, so here at university, right, it's normal for us to teach in a variety of rooms.
Yep.
And anyone who has done that knows the impact of the physical space on your class content, on your class mood, on your class, like the dynamic, right? It shifts if you're in a different spot. Yeah,
so my tacit lived example of that, I've taught Introduction to Education. I think I've taught the course 15 times now over how many years? I've taught it in 7 different classrooms on this campus. And I can teach it the same, I'm putting that in air quotes, right? But the class does not unfold the same way. If I'm in a different room, if I'm in a room that's designed for a lecture, like they're sitting there ready to listen and not talk. If I'm teaching in a classroom where we've got tables and they're sitting facing each other, it's like they can't wait to talk about things.
And even how the tables are arranged, right? So I've taught in classrooms with the same exact tables, and if they're arranged all facing the front versus if they're arranged in pods of 4, completely different atmosphere.
That's fascinating.
No, it made me... First of all, I'm just trying to wrap my head around the next time I go to Target. I'm going to have to go look at toilet brushes. Like I've never thought about that. No, for real.
Things you haven't thought about before.
It's really interesting. But it does make me, as you were talking about that, Abby, it does make me think about, like when you're in a mall or a store, just this idea of how beauty shapes our desires. You know, to go back to Jamie Smith, right? Like, how we are, for most of us, we're drawn to beautiful things. And a toilet brush is a great example of that, actually, because it's not something you would think about like, oh, I'm going to Target to look for the most beautiful toilet brush.
But
then when you see, well, maybe you are, but when you're sitting there, how can you not notice that, and then how that impacts your decisions and your choices. And I'm thinking about that in a school, like how might a beautiful space impact our pedagogy choices? Because I've taught now, and I've only been here a couple of years, and I've taught in 3 classrooms, all radically different actually. And it makes me, in knowing the space I have, it's interesting to me how that impacts my planning. Because I start now thinking, what are all the things that are possible in this space? Because I'm in this space, now I can do this, now I can try that, now I can experiment with this. And that's not to say that, because Dave, I've seen you in a lecture hall when I visited you last year, and it was still amazing to me how much engagement there was, but it's different. It's different. It's more complex. I think the space I visited you in with everybody facing the front, it's easier in a sense for students to opt out of engaging each other, build relationship, trust, engaging the topic at hand. And I'm in a classroom right now. I love it. I hope I teach there every semester. It's got tables on wheels. It's not too wide, and like we're all sort of together. There's a built-in community to that. I wander around as I teach and listen. And
you're in that room with screens on 3 different walls.
Screens on 3 different walls, so they can see it from wherever. So it's a hospitable space that way, even, right? So it's hospitable in terms of community of people sitting in small pods. It's hospitable in terms of, hey, like often I turn the lighting down. It's hospitable in terms of having different screens. Like it's good design. And I think about the correlation between good design and physical space and student learning. And I think, and I can only speak for myself, but I think when I started teaching, I undervalued that. I undervalued natural light. I undervalued, like when I did my student teaching, I did it literally in a room off the side of a stage in a school with no windows, and I was like, oh, I can make this work. And of course you can make it work. It's your job to make it work as a teacher, but don't tell me that that's what's best for student learning.
And also, I mean, you don't always have control over where you teach your physical space, right?
Totally, and that's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. But you can also control the things that you can make beautiful, right? Yes. So I always am amazed at, I have a thing for like a good syllabus paper, right? I always have the print shop print them in color. And they have this like special paper they always print them on.
The good paper.
The good paper.
I know what you're talking about.
The good paper, right? And so when they print them in color and I hand them out to my students, every single time someone comments, this is a really pretty syllabus.
Yeah.
Right? And they'll feel the paper and I think that communicates something about the course, right? I think that choice on my part, and I also am really picky about how I visually design my syllabus, and I spent a lot of time on it, and I'm really consistent across my courses with it, because I think it's really important.
Yeah. So Abby, I'm thinking about that line, right? Like you use the phrase, I'm communicating something about it. And I'm thinking about like this idea, like the medium is the message, right? Like, so I'm thinking about that, like, what are we communicating? Like, I'm thinking about that again, thinking about that for myself, or just in teaching in general, and what are we communicating in how we set up the desks in our room, right? What are we communicating about what goes on the wall and what doesn't go on the wall? You know, like I remember I learned from one teacher when I became an elementary school principal that was insistent on students having their names on the front of the paper when she hung it up, so everybody knew that beautiful work was done by this beautiful child. Well, that communicates how we value the good and beautiful work that our students are doing. And so I sometimes, and I've been in classrooms, right, where you walk in where it can be sensory overload, right? Like what that's like for a student. And I've walked into a classroom when there's nothing on the walls either. And
there's definitely a line to walk.
There's a line to walk, right? And I'd even encourage teachers to invite other teachers into their class and say, give me feedback on what works and what doesn't here.
Well, because that's the thing that I'm taking from our conversation so far, just the sense of intentionality that has to show up. Like if it's good design, it's intentionally designed. It's not haphazard and random. It's thoughtful. There's another podcast I listen to quite a bit called 99% Invisible, and it's an odd one. It's kind of weird. It's all about design, and the name comes from this idea, like if it's good design, it's 99% invisible.
Ooh, that's good.
Like you don't even notice it because it's so well designed. And so like architecture and art and but the stories they tell, like for our online presence, for the courses that we teach
or
here,
whatever your learning platform is,
right, and the way that you lay it out, that kind of intentionality and attention to detail, that really does matter, and that's part of creating this hospitable space, I think.
Can I ask you? I think you have probably due to your experience in the classroom as I'm re-entering after being a principal. What do you think of? What comes to mind when we talk about beautiful design when it comes to lesson planning? Can you guys give some initial? What sort of comes to mind when you think of that?
So, well, in light of what I just said, right, that sense of intentionality about everything, I think that's really a key part of it. It's interesting to say beauty in lesson design, because I guess I'm thinking about this sometimes. I want to be careful about equating good design to being creative, but I think being creative often leads to good designs, if I can say it that way.
Outside the box thinking a little bit.
Right. And I sometimes have students, when I'm teaching lesson planning to them, who say, well, I'm just not that creative. And I say, oh, come on. You're an image bearer of God. You were created to create. Everyone is creative. Everyone is creative, because that's part of how we reflect God's image in us. And so they might not always feel artistic, but I don't think artistic and creative is the same.
Right. We've had that discussion with my students as well. I just was reading something by, I can't remember his name, but he wrote Teach Like a Pirate.
Oh, Dave Burgess.
Dave
Okay.
Burgess, yeah.
And he talks about how his outside of school interests totally fuel his inside of school creativity.
Yeah.
And so I think he's really into magic and random other hobbies. And he'll talk about the ways, he calls it alchemy, right? How it kind of comes together in his lessons sometimes because he is in all of those other things. It fuels his creative thinking versus if he was only thinking about the classroom.
Right.
And so I think that has something to do with it too, right? How are we as creative people nurturing our own creativity outside the classroom, and how can that also follow through there?
Creativity takes on a lot of different shapes, right? So it doesn't have to be something artistic or musical or theatrical, right? Like
it can be humor.
Yeah.
It can be.
Like I always think I come back to things like cooking and baking, right? Like I like to cook. I'm not a great cook, but there's something generative and something creative. Like literally, I'm creating something by
I like
doing
to build
it,
things.
right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's where I also feel like, and we've talked about this before, for those maybe who, because I know I don't always feel very creative. I believe you that we are all creative. I don't always feel it's like I lead with creativity, but that's where for me I feel like protocols have been so helpful because they allow you, they give you a structure, but they still allow you to be creative and try different things. So I'm so thankful, folks. If you have not, if you do not use protocols, Dave, I know there's a couple of great
episode on it, so maybe we can put it in the show notes.
I'll link it in the show notes. Yeah. But I think that's often the case for real creativity, knowing what the parameters are, and then working like within those parameters. If it's a wide open sandbox, and then like
I agree.
Right? But knowing, okay, what are the rules that I can bend? What are the rules I can break?
Right.
Within those parameters.
I agree with that. I have a very set rhythm in one of my introductory courses that I set. Same types of assignments every week, kind of due on the same day so that students know what to expect. But the variety inside those assignments is wide,
and
right?
That's where you keep them on their toes.
Right, and so they always expect an admit slip, right? 1 or 2 a week. But what I have them do inside of that admit slip varies widely. So in the last week they've done, like they actually had to design a concept map of an article we read, right? Where they had to use color and images to convey what the article said. They had to do a Flipgrid video where they were practicing presenting and summarizing part of the book. So and they had to answer some questions. Right? What you would think of as a kind of regular run-of-the-mill school assignment. And so inside that structure, right, that structure gives me freedom to implement creative assignments.
Yeah, for those of you who maybe like me don't feel like that you lead with that, I do think there's options to help with that. And I think one of the things for me that I got to a place with protocols is that I realized I started using protocols when I got to a place of realizing this is what's best for students. Right? And in the end it was amazing. The more I continue to use protocols, the more thankful I am for them, because it also, because there's such a wide array, it invites different types of students into the learning, right? Like, so for some, the written response is exactly what they want. For others, they need the walking around, they need the turn to your elbow partner, they need to write something on the board or to draw a symbol. Like, there's just so many different ways, because in the end, they allow us to be creative as teachers, but they invite creativity out of students, which is what I think we want to be doing.
Right, absolutely.
Friends, we know that your time is valuable, and we want to thank you for joining us today for another hallway conversation. And whether it is this day or this week or this month, we hope that the Lord gives you what you stand in need of. And as you go into this week, we just want to send you with this blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Amen. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a good day.
This podcast was quite literally dreamed up during one of our actual hallway conversations. Our music is by Ethan Mulder. Hallway Conversations is an independent podcast created and produced by Matt Beamers, Abby DeGroat, and Dave Mulder. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Dave and Allie, good
I'm
to
sorry
see
for
you.
laughing. Abby's taking a big drink out of her cup, and I'm
That
looking
was
at her
my
like,
bad.
you? Nope, it's me.
Welcome to my world, folks. We're just trying to be organized here.
I'm just trying to drink my coffee while it's hot.
The sabotage is real. All right.
Start over.
Maybe.
Good morning.